I once heard a man describe his wife this way. The moment I saw her, I wanted her half to death. The moment she spoke, I realized someone had beaten me to it. It was my Samantha, as goofy as she was beautiful. I met Sam when she was fired for hacking into my client's computer network by uploading a video of a cute kitty. Unfortunately, it turned out that Kitty was actually an evil, malicious lioness in disguise. She looked like she needed a friend, so I offered to carry a box of her personal belongings while the head of security escorted her off the premises. Okay, I'll admit it, I thought I'd have no problem getting into her panties if I made friends. I soon learned that she never wore them under short skirts. Fast forward 6 months. Her childlike simplicity and unquenchable thirst for sex won me over, and I asked her to move in with me. 6 months later, we were married. The night before our wedding, I took her hands in mine and said, "I will be your champion, slaying dragons and picking castles for your amusement. I swear eternal love and devotion. All I asked and demanded of her was absolute loyalty. If you ever kiss another man romantically, our marriage is over. You won't get a second chance. No, I will destroy you and whoever was foolish enough to incur my wrath. I love you, and I will never do that," Sam vowed. The first 2 years of our marriage were so incredible that all of our friends were jealous. Sam was doing a great job of being a spoiled wife. All day long, she spent her days working out or lounging at the spa. Almost every night, we dined at Chicago's finest restaurants. I draped her gorgeous body in designer clothes, appropriately adorned with the finest jewelry. I loved showing her off. But one day she announced that she was bored and wanted to get a job. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake her resolve. I even offered to buy her her own business, a high-end boutique, whatever she wants. No, I want to do it myself. Much later, I learned that 2 divorced girlfriends from the health club had sown the seeds of discontent in my wife. These embittered women had lost their husbands to younger women and took perverse joy in destroying happy marriages. Week after week, they worked on Sam until they convinced her that I didn't value her, and the key to her freedom was to get a job so she could have her own money. So Sam set out to find a job in a position that would suit her. Now a beautiful woman dressed in a $500 dress, she had no problem getting an interview. Her problem came when she was asked tough questions like, "What office skills do you possess?" 3 months later, she has had dozens of interviews, yet no one has even called her back to say, "Sorry, we don't have a position open for your unique skill set." At least that's what it says on the form letter I send out to unqualified losers. But one day she came home so excited she could barely speak. She had been hired as a personal assistant. I asked her some simple questions like who hired you and what your job description was. Sam had forgotten the name of the company but was sure she could find it again. The only thing she remembered was the position involved traveling. "With who?" I asked. She rummaged through her $1,000 Gucci bag and found a business card. "I'll be working for Andrew W. Carter and Associates." The card was a cheap rectangle of white cardboard, no graphics, just Andrew W. Carter, president, CEO, and a phone number. What a cheap asshole, I thought. What exactly does Andrew W. Carter and Associates do? It has something to do with importing or exporting things. I took my wife in my arms and looked her straight in the eye. "Samantha, I have a bad feeling about this. Let me put it to the test." This led to our first ever knockdown, drag-out argument. "You don't want me to succeed. You just want me hanging on your arm like a Barbie doll." Truth be told, it was all she could do. Sam was stubborn. She kicked up her heels and refused to listen to anything I had to say. She set her jaw and stared at me. I knew that look meant she would rather take a beating than admit she was wrong. "I hope it's not too late for you to open your eyes to the truth." I discreetly had my investigators begin a full investigation of Carter. Sunday night, I received an email with a complete dossier. Carter was a small-time importer of counterfeit products that he sold to dollar stores. Much of his business was generated at regional trade shows where Sam was scheduled to appear. The current sales staff consisted of men in their 50s and early 50s. Sales had plummeted as Chinese manufacturers cut out the middlemen, laborers as they were called in the trade, and sold direct. On the eve of the big trade show in New York, Carter met with his sales staff to mull over decisions. The future of the company depended on this show. There was a widespread idea that the easiest way to increase sales was to have a beautiful woman of short stature make this very short skirt and revealing blouse the spokesperson in the booth. Sam had a closet full of uniform-compliant clothes. It was obvious that Carter didn't need a personal assistant, but an ego magnet. Things were fairly quiet on Sunday. Monday morning, Sam was dressed to the hilt. I complimented her and offered to drive her to work. She surprised me and said yes. I surprised her with an Italian leather briefcase. Sam accepted my gift with the words, "You'll be proud of me." Carter's warehouse had definitely seen better days. It was an old 3-story building. Even the sign on it was faded. Sam looked around the dilapidated building nervously. After a couple minutes, she leaned over to me and kissed me on the lips. It was an act she'd been denying me since Friday. "I think it's here." "I guess it's here. I'll pick you up at 5. She kissed me again and said, "I love you." "I love you too," I replied. The day dragged on endlessly. I waited at the end of the block for the clock to show 5 o'clock. When it did, I stopped in front of the main entrance. Several dozen men in cheap suits came out in a crowd. This must be the sales department, I thought. A few minutes later, several older women left. All were dressed for warehouse work. I waited 10 minutes before entering the lobby. Sam's laughter could be heard in the distance. I noticed a bell on the receptionist's desk and rang it vigorously. "I'll be right out," my wife called out. As soon as I met her new boss, I immediately saw him as a bastard. He didn't even extend his hand for me to shake, just a sneaky smile. As soon as we pulled away, I warned my wife, "He followed you like a lion follows a gazelle. Don't be silly. He's just a good salesman who's always on." A good salesman, damn it. This man sells wholesale knockoffs made by slave labor. He, like his products, appeals to the dregs of civilization. Sam was silent until I pulled up to one of our favorite restaurants. Tuesday morning, Sam was dressed again as if she were going to a dance. When I asked her why she was dressed like that for work in a dilapidated warehouse, she claimed she knew how to get to work and would drive herself. She walked out without answering my question or kissing me goodbye. That evening, she came home excited after a full day of exploring their grocery line. She even had a bag full of junk. I tried my best to feign interest as she described each item. The second week, 3 unpleasant things happened. Sam, still changing her clothes, started going to lunch with Carter so they could discuss the product line. She also started working late with him to prepare for the New York trade show. The final straw was when she stopped returning my calls because they were too busy working. It all started on Thursday when Sam got home a few minutes before 10. I gave her an ultimatum. Quit your job or else. Don't be such a drama king. ... IT, quote, S, just a training period. After the expo, things will settle down. I begged her to quit and again offered to invest in her own business, a store in the mall. Whatever she wanted, she again demanded that I let her succeed on her own. On Friday, Sam ignored 10 phone calls and didn't get home until after 11. I was waiting at the door when she walked in. "Are you having trouble with your phone?" Sam instantly turned into an angry bitch because I don't trust her. "I would never get in your way if you had a big career." "Big career? You make minimum wage. The jewelry you're wearing is worth more than his entire business." Sam spat venom back. "Why don't you trust me?" "I trust you. I don't trust Carter. I've seen too many predators like him. Besides, what are your qualifications for this job besides being pretty? Is there a reason you dress like a model to find out about a 99-cent piece of plastic in a dirty warehouse? This shit has really hit the fan. There's a 3-day trade conference in New York next week, and I'm going there whether you like it or not. Get used to it." "Then get used to living alone. Because if I leave, as I fear I will, I won't be here when you get back. Our marriage will be over." "I can't believe you said that. You and I should be planning how we're going to spend my paycheck. We could save it for a vacation in Europe, Hawaii, wherever you want." "Europe, Hawaii. Are you high? You're making $13 an hour. Before taxes, you can't even afford to buy us a steak on your paycheck." Sam stormed out of the room and locked herself in the bathroom. We didn't speak all weekend. Monday morning, a limo picked her up. I kissed her one last time and said, "You've made your choice. I hope you can live with it." She didn't respond. It took a while, but I arranged for a private investigator to take the seat across from her and Carter on the flight east. The cheap bastard was flying in economy. My man guaranteed he could provide audio and video recordings of their entire trip. I was foolish enough to expect a phone call from Sam to say they had arrived safely. Instead, I heard from my private investigator. They were giddy like school kids who think they can get away with anything. Carter kept putting his hand on her thigh. The first few times she protested, but eventually she let him touch her. I almost broke my phone. Then he said he was going to turn the surveillance over to his assistant so they wouldn't recognize him. I had a hell of a time not calling Sam and telling her I knew what they were doing. But that hadn't worked before. So I spent my time planning the second phase of my plan. That same evening, I received a detailed message from my detective. They spent most of the day at business events. Unfortunately, at 6 o'clock, they dispersed to their rooms and changed for dinner. I recognized the little black dress Sam was wearing. The detectives were instructed not to interfere unless Carter was forcing Sam to do something. They were to observe and document. It was killing me. But she had to choose our marriage of her own free will, but that wouldn't stop me from making one last attempt. I watched the video of them walking into the restaurant hand in real time. I called my wife, but she went straight to voicemail. So I called the restaurant and got Mrs. Samantha Weatherstone on the phone. She wasn't too pleased that I was checking on her. "I've been working hard all day and now I'm having dinner at the diner. You had the nerve to call me to check up on me." Well, maybe if you had answered my calls or texts, I wouldn't have had to look for you. "Samantha, I love you more than life itself. That's why I'm giving you one last chance to save our marriage. I know you don't eat at the diner. This is the first time you've ever lied to me, and I'm willing to forgive you if you tell Carter you're quitting. You'll have a first-class ticket waiting for you at the airport. Please, if you love me, if our marriage..." The phone went silent. My wife hung up. My detective streamed me a video of Sam drinking with Carter. The bastard heard our conversation, and I could tell he felt he'd chosen the right path when he hired Sam. He acted like he owned her, pawing at her while he plied her with alcohol. An hour later, my man sent a video of them entering his room. I had to turn my phone off because I couldn't watch the broadcast from the cameras they had installed in Carter's room. Later, after a couple of stiff drinks, I listened to him talk crap, like how it was a shame her husband didn't want her to succeed. He said I was jealous of her success. "Stick with me, and I'll make you the most successful saleswoman in the business. My idiot wife swallowed his bullshit and ended our marriage." My next call was to colleagues at the convention center in New York. Carter had already made sure his truck had arrived this morning and was waiting to be unloaded. Inside was a booth, the largest and most luxurious at the show, and thousands of catalogs and hundreds of free samples. The booth took up twice as much space as its largest competitor. It featured the best video and lighting effects. A few minutes later, Carter's 40-foot container disappeared from the loading dock. A week later, it would find itself empty at a truck stop in New Jersey. I spent the night sitting in my chair, hoping Sam had come to her senses. The next morning, my detective confirmed that they spent the night in his room and slept together. "He treated your wife like a prostitute." As soon as they entered the room, he pulled down her dress. "After a few minutes, your wife rolled to the other side of the bed. The detective said it looked like she hadn't slept a minute. I heard her crying most of the night." Trying to contain my anger, I made 2 more calls, this time on the local phone. I said exactly one word to each: begin. The next morning, the concierge slipped a note under Carter's door, addressed to my wife. "I called your room all night, but no one answered. I guess that means goodbye forever." The detective said she screamed and started crying hysterically about how she had made a huge mistake, and Carter had better stay away from her or else. "What do I care? I've had better chicks than you. Now get dressed. You have a job to do." He picked up her dress from the floor and threw it at her. Sam begged him to give her a return ticket. He laughed in her face and called her a stupid whore. "If you want to go home, you better get your ass ready to tease my customers." You got me drunk and raped me. Sam turned up the volume. I didn't force you to do anything. If you call the police, they'll look at the way you were dressed and realize you're a whore. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was one of the salesmen. Sam grabbed her dress and hurried into the bathroom. Carter opened the door with his bare ass holding Sam's lacy bra. He wanted to make sure Angelo saw what he had done. Boss, we have a big problem. I was in the conference room checking our place, but there was nothing there. What do you mean there was nothing? That's what it means. There's no booth there, no boxes, no samples, nothing. I talked to the guy at the dock, and he said the truck wasn't there. Carter went white as a sheet. All he could say was shit. It took Sam a while to get up the nerve to call me. She'd obviously decided to play dumb, and she'd succeeded. I didn't answer, but immediately went straight to voicemail. Even though I knew it wouldn't change anything, I had to know if Sam was going to come clean about her actions. I'm sorry, honey, I took a sleeping pill and didn't hear the call. She had the nerve to say, I love you. Please call me when you get this message. After that, she called every 10 minutes. I ignored all of them. Instead, I called my attorney and had him prepare the divorce papers. Carter, meanwhile, was melting down. The exhibit opened in 30 minutes, and he had nothing. He started making frantic phone calls. The police couldn't help. Cameras mounted on the cargo dock showed a white truck with no license plate or title gone last night. They said a detective would be there in an hour or so to investigate. Carter called the warehouse and told them to gather up all the catalogs and brochures they had and send them on the next flight to New York. There was some pretty meager loot. Carter spent the afternoon sitting on a borrowed bar stool in front of a cardboard sign he'd made from a stationery store. His sales staff looked awkward trying to sell invisible products. Sam looked horrified as she stood alone in the corner crying quietly. Andrew Carter and associates quickly became the butt of jokes among those in attendance. His Chinese competitors, whose booth was directly across the aisle, politely smiled and bowed to him every time they handed out one of their endless bags of samples. A pallet full of boxes finally appeared late in the afternoon on the second day of the show. Their contents, however, were outdated catalogs and last year's no longer hot products. My man said several people stopped by to talk to Carter, but no one wanted to place an order with an employee who, by all accounts, wouldn't work for 3 months. Instead, his competitors sucked up all the orders. By the end of the second day, Carter was broke. He finally agreed to Sam's demand that he let her go home. Carter gathered his sales staff and ordered them to continue the fight, even as he hastily retreated. He told one of them to exchange their tickets and send them home as soon as possible. Sam wasn't very happy when she learned that the plane didn't leave until 10 a.m. and spent the night locked in her room. She dutifully sent me her flight information. Flight 901 arrives at O'Hare Airfield tomorrow at noon. Then she added, I miss you. Even though they were sitting next to each other, no one spoke. Carter was too busy trying to figure out how to restructure his line of credit since he no longer had the receivables to back it up. Sam looked straight ahead and prayed the entire flight that she would be able to save her marriage. One of the added benefits of working for a venture capitalist is that I have known people who were able to get things done without spending time on paperwork. These are the people who exist in the darkest of shadows, and many of them owed me favors. Big favors. The 2 phone calls I'd made earlier set things in motion. I knew she would be arriving on a plane at 9 a.m. local time. I waited until the plane was in the air and she was out of contact to cancel both of our cell phones. Then I canceled all of our credit cards and transferred every last dime we had in the bank to a hidden account. By noon, the money would be lost. Some asshole in a black coat might say she was entitled to half, but she could go fuck herself. There was a knock on my door, and a crew of movers started packing up all my personal possessions for storage. I took all the jewelry that didn't make it to New York. 20 minutes after the movers left, a bulldozer and a small crane were unloaded in my driveway. No questions were asked. They just started turning my $500,000 home into a neat pile of rubble. When they were done, they too disappeared into the fog like the mythical Brigadoon. My detective sat in the row behind Sam. He said neither of them uttered a single word during the flight. As soon as they landed, she tried to turn on her cell phone. She became very nervous when she learned that her service had been canceled. Sam almost ran down the gangway to get to the payphone. A man in a black suit with a sign with her name on it was standing in front of a crowd of departing passengers. She assumed he was the limo driver to take her home and asked if she could borrow his phone. "Are you Mrs. Samantha Weatherstone?" "Yes, I am. Now please lend me your cell phone." He handed her a large manila envelope. "You've been served. And no, you can't take my phone." Sam was starting to freak out. "I don't see our driver," Carter said as he approached. "Get the hell away from me or I'll scream." Sam found a phone and called my cell phone. She got a message that the number had been disconnected. She then dialed my office number, which I told her was for emergencies only, and was told that no one by that name worked there. I had already left for a new position in our Los Angeles office. Terror gripped her as she remembered the envelope. She tore open the envelope and read the petition for dissolution of marriage. Samantha, sobbing, fell to her knees. Pictures of her naked with her boss sprinkled in. What she didn't know was that an identical set of photos had been delivered to his wife at the same moment. Airport security was alerted that the woman was having health problems and a team arrived to assist. One of them took her bags while the paramedics tried to figure out what her problem was. She begged them to help her get a cab. "I have to get home before it's too late," she pleaded. They walked towards her and caught a cab. She begged the driver to go faster. When they pulled into her alley, she pitched forward and began to tell the driver where to turn. As they rounded the corner, Sam looked puzzled and then let out a blood-chilling scream when she realized her house no longer existed. The driver wanted to get away from the crazy lady and demanded his $45 fare. She dazedly held out her credit card to him. He tried to run it. This one wouldn't work. She tried every card she had, but all were rejected. "If you don't have any money, I'll call the police." Sam searched her pockets and finally found the money. The driver put her bags on the sidewalk and drove off. Samantha fell to the ground. She could barely breathe. Everything was gone. All her dreams shattered. Carter's day ended as badly as it had begun. Two of my coworkers followed him to his North Shore home. They were driving a pickup truck they'd borrowed when the driver ran into the store for a pack of cigarettes. They watched from the street as Carter stepped out of the limo and, shoulders slumped, headed for the front door. He hadn't even made it to the front door when his wife jumped out into the street and thundered, "Get out, you asshole, you son of a bitch!" She waved the pictures he had of Sam in front of his face. Carter was at a loss for words as his wife pounced on him. Two neighbors came out to see what was going on. Carter's BMW was parked in the driveway, and he was able to climb inside while she pounded on the windshield. "I'm going to divorce your cheating ass." She picked up his suitcase and shattered it against the glass. Carter sprinted across the lawn to get away. He didn't even notice he was being followed. Carter stopped at the bar and ordered a double clear scotch. He washed it down with another. An hour and 3 stiff drinks later, Carter eased himself into the drink as he drove to his warehouse. That same night, the office and warehouse of Andrew Carter and Associates burned to the ground. It was the top story on the news for 2 days. It was the most impressive fire involving fire engines from 7 suburban departments. You might imagine the flames licking the sky, clearing the ground of Andrew Carter's stench. It was still smoldering the next day when firefighters were able to enter to douse the blazing points of the fire with water. The fire burned so badly from all the paper and plastic that it took investigators 2 more days to find Carter's charred remains. There was a large hole gaping in his skull. They found a gun a few feet away that was missing 1 bullet. The body was so charred that the coroner couldn't see that Carter had been tortured for over 6 hours before being allowed to die. They were only able to identify him from dental records. I heard that the pain was so bad that he begged to be allowed to kill himself. They were very careful not to break any bones, but they inflicted the pain with a propane torch, melting his flesh down to the bone. The coroner's inquest panel ruled his death a suicide. Their sequence of events said he was depressed about the missing truck and the total failure at the show, and then his wife kicked him out for having an affair. Then he got drunk, shut off the fire protection system, and set fire to his warehouse. When the flames approached his office, he put the muzzle of a gun in his mouth and killed himself. The insurance company also assigned a team of arson investigators to comb through what little remained of the huge building. Their forensic accounting colleagues confirmed it was an arson for insurance purposes. They eventually denied it to his widow. Epilogue. Because one man couldn't keep his pants on, his wife and children lost their home, 20 people lost their jobs, and I lost the only woman I've ever loved. As for the two witches who caused all this sadness, I did my best to make sure they never caused anyone else any trouble.